The Williams family from Cleveland, Ohio stood at their positions, ready for another round of Family Feud. Janet Williams, 45 years old with graying hair she'd stopped coloring when her son deployed, kept adjusting the purple heart pendant around her neck. It was a nervous habit she'd developed over the past 11 months. Her husband Robert stood beside her, his postal worker uniform freshly pressed for the show. Their eldest daughter, Keisha, 22 and in her last year of nursing school, kept glancing at her mother with concern. Uncle Jerome and Cousin Tiffany rounded out the family line. They were facing the Henderson family from Kentucky, and the game had been competitive but friendly. The Williamses were ahead by 30 points going into the third round, but Janet's mind seemed elsewhere. Steve Harvey, with his decades of experience reading people, noticed immediately. "All right, Williams family. You're doing great," Steve said, his trademark smile warming the studio. "But Mrs. Janet, I gotta ask, you keep touching that necklace. That's about the 20th time since we started. Something special about it?" Janet's hand froze on the pendant. She gave a small, sad smile. It's a reminder, Mr. Harvey, of someone who can't be here today." Steve's expression softened. He'd seen that look too many times. The hollow pride of military families carrying on while someone they loved served far from home. "Military family?" "Yes, sir," Robert spoke up, putting his arm around his wife. "Our son Marcus, Marine Corps, second deployment." The audience gave a warm round of applause, as they always did for military families. Steve nodded respectfully. "Where's he stationed?" Janet started, then stopped. "Can we talk about something else?" "I'm sorry, we're here to have fun, right? To play the game?" Steve recognized the deflection, but didn't push. "Of course, baby. Let's play the game. But you know what? We're going to commercial in about 2 minutes. Why don't we finish this round, and then we can take a breather?" They completed the round, with the Williams family extending their lead. As soon as the commercial break was called, Steve walked over to Janet. The cameras were still rolling for behind-the-scenes footage, but the studio audience was stretching and chatting. "Janet," Steve said gently, "I've been doing this show for a long time. I know when something's weighing on someone. You don't have to tell me, but sometimes it helps to talk." Janet looked at her family, who all nodded encouragingly. Keisha spoke up. "Tell him, Mama. It's okay." Janet took a deep breath. "Marcus isn't stationed anywhere right now. He's at Walter Reed Medical Center in Maryland." Steve's face grew serious. "What happened?" Robert answered, his voice steady but strained. "September 12th, 2024. His unit was providing security for a convoy outside of Mosul, Iraq. They were helping evacuate civilians from a village when insurgents attacked. Marcus was vehicle commander," Janet continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Their MRAP hit an IED. The vehicle rolled down an embankment." Keisha picked up the story when her mother couldn't continue. "The vehicle was upside down, leaking fuel. His driver was unconscious. The gunner had shrapnel wounds and couldn't move. The translator was trapped. Marcus had a clear path out through his hatch," Robert said, pride breaking through his pain. "His door was damaged but working. He could have gotten out clean, but he went back in 3 times. He pulled each one out while the vehicle was smoking and insurgents were still firing from the ridgeline. He got them all to safety," Keisha said. "Set up a defensive position with just his sidearm and 1 rifle, called for medevac, and held that position for 20 minutes until the quick reaction force arrived." Steve stood in respectful silence for a moment. "The 3 men he saved? All alive," Janet whispered. "Corporal Jackson, the driver. He had a severe concussion but recovered fully. Lance Corporal Rodriguez, the gunner. He lost partial hearing in 1 ear, but he's back with his family. And Malik, the translator. He's here now, in America, with his family." Marcus's actions qualified him for the special immigrant visa. "And Marcus?" Steve asked gently. Janet's composure cracked slightly. "Shrapnel in his left shoulder and leg. 3 surgeries. He's been at Walter Reed for 4 months. 4 months of physical therapy, learning to use his arm again. He can walk now, but the nerve damage. He's missed everything, Robert added quietly. His daughter Jasmine's 2nd birthday. Teaching her to ride her little bike. Every bedtime story. She asks for Daddy every night, and all we can do is show her the tablet screen. My son is a hero, Janet said firmly. Bronze star with valor, Purple Heart. But I know he'd trade every medal just to tuck his baby into bed without being 3,000 miles away. Steve was about to respond when he noticed his executive producer, Marcus Freeman, walking toward them with unusual urgency. This was highly irregular. Freeman never came on set during taping unless something significant was happening. "Steve," Freeman said, loud enough for his mic to pick up, "I need you to take this right now. We have an urgent call." Steve looked confused. "Marcus, we're in the middle of taping. We're about to come back from commercial in 30 seconds. "This absolutely cannot wait," Freeman insisted. He was carrying a phone and his expression was unreadable but intense. "It's about the Williams family. This is time sensitive." Janet grabbed Robert's hand. "Oh God, is it Marcus? Did something happen?" Freeman held up his hand. "Mrs. Williams, everything is okay. Better than okay. Steve, please take this call." Steve took the phone, completely bewildered. The audience had noticed something unusual was happening and had grown quiet. The other cameras were rolling, capturing everything. "Hello?" Steve said into the phone. The voice on the other end was clear and authoritative. "Mr. Harvey? This is Colonel James Morrison, Marcus Williams's commanding officer, calling from Camp Pendleton." Janet's legs nearly gave out. Robert steadied her. "Is he okay? Please, is our son okay?" Steve held the phone so everyone could hear. "Go ahead, Colonel. Mr. Harvey, I'm calling because Lance Corporal Williams has been keeping a secret from his family. 2 weeks ago, he was discharged from Walter Reed. He's completed his physical therapy ahead of schedule, remarkably ahead of schedule." Janet gasped. "What? Then where is he? Why didn't he call?" The colonel's voice carried a smile. "Ma'am, your son wanted to do something special. He's been working with the Family Feud producers and some very important people to surprise you. Marcus, do you want to take over?" The phone speaker crackled, and then a familiar voice came through. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad." Janet fell to her knees, sobbing. "Marcus? Baby? Is that you?" "It's me, Mom. I'm okay. I'm really okay. And Mom, I need you to know something. The doctors cleared me for full duty, but I'm not going back. I'm done. Honorable discharge after this tour. I'm coming home for good." "When?" Robert asked, his voice breaking. "When are you coming home?" "Dad," Marcus said, and they could hear the emotion in his voice. "I need you all to turn around." The entire Williams family turned slowly. Walking onto the Family Feud stage was Lance Corporal Marcus Williams in his dress blues, looking thinner than when he'd left, but strong. His left arm showed limited movement, and he walked with a slight limp, but he was walking on his own. His Bronze Star and Purple Heart were prominent on his chest. Janet ran to her son, crashing into him with such force that everyone worried she might hurt his injuries. But Marcus stood firm, wrapping his arms around his mother, his left arm moving stiffly but functioning. "I'm home, Mom. I'm home for good." Robert joined them, embracing both his wife and son. Keisha, Jerome, and Tiffany surrounded them in a group hug that seemed to last forever. The audience was on their feet, many crying openly. Steve had to remove his glasses to wipe his eyes, but Marcus gently extracted himself from the embrace. "Wait, there's more," he said, turning toward the side of the stage. "I brought some people with me." 3 men walked onto the stage. The first was an African-American Marine in dress blues with corporal chevrons. The second was a young Hispanic Marine, also in dress blues. The third was an Iraqi man in a suit, walking with his wife and young son. "Mom, Dad," Marcus said, "these are the men who they say I saved, but the truth is, We saved each other. Corporal Jackson, Lance Corporal Rodriguez, and Malik Hassan, our translator. Corporal Jackson stepped forward first. Mrs. Williams, your son didn't just pull me from that vehicle. He stayed with me when I was unconscious, keeping my airway clear while taking fire. He could have left me and saved himself. But he didn't. Lance Corporal Rodriguez spoke next, his voice thick with emotion. Ma'am, when I got hit with shrapnel, I was bleeding bad. Marcus used his own tourniquet on me, leaving himself unprotected. He literally gave me the medical supplies that were meant for him. Malik Hassan, the translator, had tears in his eyes as he spoke with a slight accent. Mrs. Williams, I am not a soldier. I was just a translator trying to help my country and feed my family. When the vehicle rolled, the American Marines had no obligation to risk their lives for me. But your son, he came back for me last, even though the fuel was leaking more and more. He told me, "You're one of us. We don't leave anyone behind. Because of him, my wife has a husband, my son has a father, and we have a new life in America." Malik's young son, maybe 6 years old, stepped forward and handed Janet a drawing. It was a child's picture of a soldier helping people, with hero written in crayon at the top. I drew this for Marcus's mama, the boy said shyly. He saved my papa. Janet knelt down and hugged the child, sobbing. Steve stepped forward, visibly moved. Marcus, tell us about that day. Marcus stood at attention, though his mother still held his good hand tightly. Mr. Harvey, that day was supposed to be routine. We were helping evacuate civilians who'd been caught between insurgent groups, families who just wanted to live in peace. He paused, collecting himself. When the IED hit, everything went sideways. The MRAP weighs about 14 tons, but it flipped like a toy. When we stopped rolling, I could smell the fuel, see smoke starting. My shoulder was messed up from the impact, shrapnel in my leg, but I could move. But you were injured, Steve prompted. Sir, everyone in that vehicle was somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's hope, Marcus said simply. Jackson has 2 little girls. Rodriguez just got married 6 months ago. Malik was 2 weeks away from getting his visa approved to bring his family to safety. Their lives mattered more than my injuries. Tell them about the 20 minutes, Jackson interjected. Tell them what you did. Marcus looked uncomfortable. It wasn't anything special. With respect, Lance Corporal, shut up, Jackson said, making everyone laugh through their tears. This man held a defensive position with a separated shoulder and shrapnel in his leg. He was down to 1 magazine of ammunition, using controlled shots to keep the insurgents back while the rest of us were either unconscious or bleeding. 20 minutes of pure determination, Rodriguez added. He kept talking to us the whole time, keeping us conscious, telling jokes, stories about his daughter, anything to keep us awake and fighting. Steve turned to Malik. And you immigrated here because of Marcus's actions? Malik nodded. The special immigrant visa program for translators usually takes years. But because Marcus put in the recommendation, because he said I was essential to the mission and saved American lives too, which wasn't really true, I just translated. They expedited it. My family was here in 3 months. Where are you living now? Steve asked. Cleveland, Malik said with a smile. Near the Williams family. Mrs. Janet helps my wife with English. Mr. Robert helped me get a job at the post office. We are neighbors now. Family. Steve was about to respond when Freeman stepped forward again. There's one more surprise. A young woman walked onto the stage carrying a 2-year-old girl with Marcus's eyes and Janet's smile. It was Shayla, Marcus's wife, and Jasmine, their daughter. Daddy, Jasmine squealed, reaching for Marcus. Marcus caught her with his good arm, holding her against his chest as tears streamed down his face. Hi, Princess. Daddy's home. You got owies? Jasmine asked, touching his medals gently. Yeah, baby. Daddy got some owies. But I'm all better now. Shayla embraced them both, careful of Marcus's shoulder. 4 months, she whispered. 4 months of her asking for you every single day. Never again, Marcus promised. "I'm never leaving again." Steve gave them a moment before continuing. "Marcus, I understand there's been more than just physical challenges." Marcus adjusted Jasmine in his arms, his left arm supporting her despite its limitations. "Yes, sir. The medical bills, even with VA coverage, have been overwhelming. The rehabilitation, the surgeries, the medications." And Shayla had to reduce her hours at work to take care of Jasmine alone. "We're behind on everything," Shayla admitted quietly. "Mortgage, car payments, credit cards. Mom and Dad Williams have been helping, but they're struggling too." Janet shook her head. "It doesn't matter. Bills are just bills. Our son is home." Steve looked at his producer, who nodded. "Well, I think it's time we did something about that. Marcus, did you know that your unit back in Iraq has been busy?" Marcus looked confused. "My unit?" "2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines," Steve said. "They started something called Operation Homecoming. Every Marine in your unit contributed to a fund for your family." But it didn't stop there. It spread to the entire regiment, then to Marines at Camp Pendleton, then across the Corps. Freeman handed Steve a tablet. "As of this morning, Operation Homecoming has raised $426,000 for your family." Janet gasped. Robert had to sit down. Marcus looked stunned. "That's impossible," Marcus said. "Why would they?" Corporal Jackson answered. "Because Marines take care of Marines, and because your story reminded everyone what no one left behind really means." Steve continued. "But that's not all. Marcus, we've been in contact with several organizations. The Wounded Warrior Project is covering all your medical expenses going forward. The Semper Fi Fund is paying off your mortgage, and the Gary Sinise Foundation is modifying your house to accommodate your injuries, all free of charge." Shayla was crying so hard she could barely stand. "This can't be real." "It's real," Steve assured her. "But we're not done. The Henderson family, who you're competing against today. Would you all come over here?" The Henderson family from Kentucky walked over. The grandfather, Tom Henderson, was a Vietnam veteran. He shook Marcus's hand carefully, mindful of his injuries. "Son," Tom said, "I know what it's like to come home different than you left. When we heard your story backstage, our family made a decision. We're forfeiting the competition. Whatever prize money we would have won, it's yours. And we're donating our appearance fee to your family as well." Steve nodded. "That's beautiful. And you know what? The show is matching it. But there's still more." He turned to face the cameras directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing today isn't just a reunion. It's Americans taking care of their own." Steve looked at Keisha. "I understand you're having to leave nursing school?" Keisha looked down. "1 semester left, but with everything happening, the loans, I can't afford it." "Yes, you can," Steve said. "The Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation is paying for your final semester and your student loans. We need nurses who understand sacrifice and family." Keisha broke down, hugging Steve tightly. "Now," Steve said, composing himself, "we're going to play Family Feud, but we're doing it differently today. Both families are playing together. Whatever you win, you split. But here's the kicker. We're playing for double the usual prize money. And my foundation is matching whatever you win." The families lined up together, Williams and Henderson united. Marcus stood with his family, Jasmine in his arms, Shayla beside him. His fellow Marines stood in the audience, at attention, honoring their brother. They played the game with joy instead of competition. Every answer was celebrated by both families. When they got to fast money, Marcus was chosen to play. "You ready for this, Marine?" Steve asked. "Sir?" "Yes, sir," Marcus responded, shifting Jasmine to his good arm. 20 seconds on the clock. Here we go. Name something people take for granted." Marcus answered immediately. "Being able to pick up your kid with both arms." The audience went quiet. It was such a raw, honest answer. Steve continued, his voice gentle. "Name something that makes you proud to be American. Brothers who run toward danger to help each other. Number of months that feel like forever. 4. Marcus said without hesitation. His time at Walter Reed. Name something a soldier fights for. The Marine beside him. Name something worth any sacrifice. Marcus looked at his daughter, his wife, his family, his brothers in arms. Family. Every kind of family. The buzzer sounded. The answers were revealed one by one, and every single one was on the board. The families won the maximum prize, which, with Steve's matching, meant $200,000 split between them. But the show wasn't over. Steve turned to the audience. Marcus, there's one more thing. We've been in contact with someone at the Pentagon. On the big screen, a video message began to play. It was a general in full dress uniform, Lance Corporal Williams. The general said, "Your actions in Iraq represent the finest traditions of the United States Marine Corps. It's my privilege to inform you that you've been meritoriously promoted to corporal, effective immediately. Furthermore, you've been selected to receive the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for your heroic actions. The ceremony will be held at Camp Pendleton next month, and your entire family is invited." Marcus stood at attention, tears flowing freely down his scarred face. Steve wasn't finished. "Marcus, what are your plans now that you're home?" Marcus shifted Jasmine, who had fallen asleep in his arms. "I want to go to college, Mr. Harvey. Use my GI Bill. I want to become a physical therapist, help other wounded veterans. The therapists at Walter Reed saved my life, gave me my mobility back. I want to do that for others." "Well," Steve said, "Cleveland State University just called. They're offering you a full scholarship in addition to your GI Bill benefits. They want you in their physical therapy program, and they're creating a veteran support position just for you, helping other student veterans adjust to campus life." Marcus was speechless. Malik stepped forward. "Marcus, my son has something to tell you." The little boy looked up at Marcus shyly. "Mr. Marcus, when I grow up, I want to be brave, like you, but not a soldier. My papa says there are many ways to be brave." Marcus knelt down carefully, balancing Jasmine while he spoke to the boy at eye level. "Your papa is right. Being brave is about helping others, standing up for what's right. You can do that as a doctor, a teacher, anything you want." "I want to be a helper," the boy said, "like you helped my papa." The studio was silent, except for sniffles. Steve had to take a moment to compose himself. "Marcus," Steve finally said, "before we end, I want you to know something. Your story has already made a difference. Since we started taping this episode 2 hours ago, we've received over 3,000 emails from veterans wanting to help, offering support, sharing their own stories. You've started something." Marcus stood up, holding his sleeping daughter. "Mr. Harvey, I'm just one Marine. There are thousands who've done more, sacrificed more." "Maybe," Steve said, "but you're the one here today, reminding us that heroes come home needing our support, that they come home to daughters who need their fathers, to wives who need their husbands, to parents who need their sons." Steve turned to the camera. "If you're watching this and you know a veteran, check on them. Not just on Veterans Day, but every day. Ask how they're doing. Ask what they need. Because they've given us everything, and the least we can do is make sure they know they're not forgotten." As the show wrapped up, Marcus stood with his family, surrounded by love and support. His injuries were visible, the stiff shoulder, the slight limp, the scars on his hands. But they no longer seemed like limitations. They were proof of service, of sacrifice, of love so profound it transcends personal safety. "Mr. Harvey," Marcus said, his voice steady, "can I say something?" "Go ahead, son." "For 4 months at Walter Reed, I thought my life was over, not because of my injuries, but because I felt useless. I went from being a Marine, protecting others, to needing help with everything. It was humiliating." He paused, kissing Jasmine's forehead as she slept. "But my brothers here?" He gestured to Jackson and Rodriguez. "They called me every day. Not to thank me, but just to talk. About football. About their kids. About stupid jokes. They kept me connected to life outside the hospital. Jackson stepped forward. Marcus, you need to tell them what you did at Walter Reed. Marcus shook his head. That's not important. It is, Rodriguez insisted. Mr. Harvey, Marcus spent every day he could move around visiting other wounded veterans. Guys way worse off than him. He'd wheel himself around with one arm, talking to them, encouraging them, being there when their families couldn't be. A nurse from Walter Reed had actually sent a letter that Freeman now read aloud. Lance Corporal Williams became known as the Midnight Motivator. He would visit veterans having nightmares, panic attacks, dark moments. He'd sit with them, share his own struggles, remind them they weren't alone. He saved lives at Walter Reed just like he did in Iraq by refusing to leave anyone behind. The audience erupted in applause. Marcus looked embarrassed but proud. That's why I want to be a physical therapist, Marcus explained. It's not just about the body. It's about reminding people that they're still whole, even when they feel broken. Steve asked Shayla, "How are you doing with all of this?" Shayla wiped her eyes. For 4 months, I've been a single parent, trying to be strong for Jasmine while falling apart inside. Every night, she'd ask for Daddy, and I'd have to explain he had owies and couldn't come home yet. But she never stopped asking. Never stopped believing he'd come back. She looked at Marcus with pure love. And he did. Different, but here. That's all that matters. The scars don't bother you? Someone from the audience asked. Shayla touched Marcus's scarred hand gently. These scars mean he chose others over himself. They mean he's the man I married, the one who always puts others first. How could that bother me? These scars are proof of his character. Little Jasmine stirred in Marcus's arms, waking up. She looked around at all the people, then up at her father. "Daddy home?" she asked sleepily. "Yeah, baby. Daddy's home forever." "Good," she said simply, then snuggled back into his chest. No more bye-bye. That simple statement from a 2-year-old broke whatever composure remained in the studio. Even the camera operators were crying. Steve gathered himself for final thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've witnessed today is more than television. It's a reminder that freedom isn't free. It's paid for by families like the Williamses, by young men and women who run toward danger instead of away from it. He looked at Marcus, standing with his fellow Marines. These men, what they did in Iraq, it matters. Not because it was war, but because it was love. Love for each other, love for their country, love for families they might never meet but were determined to protect. And now, Steve continued, it's our turn to show that same love back, to make sure no veteran struggles alone, to make sure no military family loses their home while their loved one is recovering from wounds earned in our service. The show ended with both families standing together. Tom Henderson, the Vietnam veteran from the competing family, stood next to Marcus. "Welcome home, Marine," Tom said simply. "Really home." "Thank you, sir," Marcus replied. "All of you who served before us, you paved the way, made it possible for us to come home, to support like this." After the cameras stopped rolling, the studio audience didn't leave immediately. They formed a receiving line, each person wanting to shake Marcus's hand, to thank him, to share their own military connections. One young woman approached with tears in her eyes. "My brother is at Walter Reed right now. Lost both legs in Anbar province. He's given up. Can I give him your contact information?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Better than that. I'll go see him. This weekend." "What's his name?" "Tyler. Lance Corporal Tyler Morrison." "I'll be there Saturday," Marcus promised. "Tell him another Marine is coming to visit. Tell him he's not alone." The young woman hugged him carefully, sobbing. Steve watched all of this, then made a decision. "Marcus, I want to make you an offer. My foundation wants to hire you as a spokesperson for Veteran Affairs. Part-time, work around your college schedule. You'd travel to military hospitals, speak at events, help us raise awareness and funds for wounded warriors." Marcus was stunned. Mr. Harvey, I don't know anything about being a spokesperson. You know how to inspire people. You know how to remind them they're not alone. That's all we need. As the Williams family finally prepared to leave the studio, they were different than when they'd arrived. They'd come to play a game show. They were leaving as part of something bigger, a national reminder of service, sacrifice, and the sacred obligation to care for those who protect us. Marcus walked out carrying Jasmine, his left arm still weak but functional enough to hold his daughter's hand. Shayla walked beside him, her hand on his back, steadying him when his leg bothered him. His parents flanked them, his mother still clutching that purple heart pendant, but now with pride instead of worry. Behind them walked Jackson, Rodriguez, and Malik's family. Brothers in arms, brothers in survival, brothers in healing. 3 months later, the episode aired on Veterans Day 2024. It drew the largest audience in Family Feud history. But more importantly, it sparked a movement. Veterans organizations reported record donations. Military families received unprecedented support. The VA received thousands of volunteer applications. Marcus kept his promise to Lance Corporal Tyler Morrison. He visited him that Saturday and every Saturday for 2 months until Tyler found his fight again. Tyler would eventually compete in the Warrior Games, winning gold in swimming. Marcus started college in January 2025, majoring in physical therapy. He worked part-time for the Harvey Foundation, traveling to military hospitals across the country. His message was always the same. You're not broken. You're wounded. There's a difference. Wounded can heal. Jasmine grew up knowing her daddy was a hero, but more importantly, knowing he was there. Every birthday, every first day of school, every nightmare that needed comfort, he was there. The 3 Marines Marcus saved stayed in close contact. Jackson made sergeant and became a drill instructor, using Marcus's story to teach recruits about honor. Rodriguez became a recruiter, showing potential Marines that the Corps takes care of its own. Malik became an American citizen, and his son, the little boy who drew the picture, started school determined to be a helper, like Mr. Marcus. Steve Harvey kept a photo from that day in his dressing room, catted it. Not the formal group shot, but a candid moment when Jasmine fell asleep in Marcus's arms, her tiny hand holding his scarred one. It reminded him that television could be more than entertainment. It could be a force for healing, for recognition, for bringing America together around its best values. The episode ended with a simple dedication. To all who serve, all who wait, and all who come home different than they left. America sees you, honors you, and stands ready to help you heal. But perhaps the most profound impact was in the thousands of messages from veterans who saw the show. They wrote to say that seeing Marcus's struggle and triumph helped them seek help, that seeing America embrace a wounded warrior gave them hope, that seeing a Marine refuse to leave anyone behind, even after coming home, reminded them they weren't alone. Marcus Williams continued his physical therapy studies, graduated with honors, and opened a practice specializing in veteran rehabilitation. Above his desk, he hung 3 items: his bronze star, a photo from that day on Family Feud, and the crayon drawing from Malik's son that said hero. When patients asked about them, he'd always say the same thing. The medal is for 1 day of doing my job. The photo is the day America welcomed me home. But the drawing? That's from a kid who gets to grow up with his father, because sometimes people don't leave people behind. That's what really matters. The Williams family still watches Family Feud together every night. But now, it's different. Marcus sits in his chair, Jasmine on his lap, Shayla beside him. His shoulder aches when it rains. His leg gets stiff when he sits too long, but he's there. And in the end, that's all any of them wanted. Not fame, not money, not even recognition. Just a Marine coming home to his family, and an America ready to catch him when he did. The phone call, or in this case, the surprise, that stopped Family Feud became more than just viral television. It became a reminder that heroes walk among us, that they come home needing our support, and that sometimes, on a game show stage in front of America, we get the chance to say thank you in a way that really matters. And Marcus? He kept his promise. He never left anyone behind. Not in Iraq, not at Walter Reed, and not in the years that followed. Because once a Marine, always a Marine. And Marines take care of their own.